Hello, hello. Hi there, and welcome to This Mindful Muse, a podcast. In case we haven't met before, my name is Irene. I'm the host of This Mindful Muse, a podcast. I am also trained in the following healing modalities: mindfulness and meditation, EFT or emotional freedom tapping, Akashic records reading, quantum healing hypnosis technique, and more. I am so excited to dive in today because it is Pride Month. I am actually wearing my pride flag that I usually have hanging on the door to my husband's and my home office. And I just wanted to happily wear it here because it's really important right now, more than ever. It's really important that folks allow themselves to be seen, heard, and valued. And so let's focus on love. Let's focus on love today. Let's focus on giving ourselves permission to take up space unapologetically. That is what today's episode is about. All right, so let's dive in. I have found it incredibly helpful during times of feeling distanced from other folks, during times of political discord, during times of political separation. Right? We talk about how, especially in the States, I'm not sure where you are coming to us from, but thank you for being here. We talk about how in the States, how polarized our identities have become. And I have found it really, really important to keep a few things in mind, and I would love to share them with you here. And if they resonate with you, beautiful, I hope you take them, have them, use them. If they don't resonate with you, that's okay. I trust that you will find what resonates with you at this point in time in divine timing. Let's dive in. Let's think about the law of one. The law of one. This one I find, in terms of universal laws, to be challenging and beautiful. Why would it be challenging? Well, if we think about, if we consider the idea that the law of one suggests that we all come from, everything that exists, everything that is, every conscious and unconscious being or thing, right, comes from source, creator, God, the light, however you want to categorize it. The creative force and energy that began it all. It is pure light, pure love. And in order, the idea of creator to better know itself, it decided to split into various identities to know what separation felt like. The learning is through practical application, not just through theory. So giving itself an opportunity to say, I know that I am love and that I am light, and I have all these parts of myself. If you've ever done parts work, think about this as parts work. Think about creator, source, God, love, light, energy, the beingness, right? The muchness. Deciding, gosh, I wonder what separation feels like. If I am light, what is dark? If I'm this, what is that? Right? The uniqueness of being multiple entities that are all connected to the one. So then we have to sit with, if we begin to contemplate this idea, if we begin to engage with it, if we begin to consider whether or not we want to adopt it into our belief systems or system, we think about, I am one, right? If I am connected to source and everything comes from source, everything is connected through source, I am connected to everything. I'm connected to this desk. I'm connected to the sky. I'm connected to the trees. I'm connected to the person who does not have love for me. I am connected to the person who bullied me in elementary school. I am connected to the person who is deeply triggered or threatened by my own existence. So there are beautiful parts of this. Gosh, being connected to the sun, being connected to the moon, the stars in the sky. We are star stuff. Being connected to every other human being. It sounds so beautiful, and it is. And it is also challenging. Because it means that the folks that we do not see eye to eye with are also of divine light and source, are also of God, are also of creator. How can that be? How can it be that this person who cannot have love for me is also of source? That feels wild. So then we begin to think about what we intend to learn through embodiment. If you were to come into this embodiment, this existence, who knows, maybe you were a rock in a past life because you wanted to know how to be or be still, right? To support. If you don't believe in past lives, let's say you only believe you get this one shot, you get it, and that's it. The idea that in this one shot, that you have an opportunity to learn to love yourself and others. Knowing that you are connected to Source, which is only all love and light. We are all still connected, right? If we chose to experience uniqueness, disconnection, individualism, so that we could better understand what it then is and appreciate what it then is to come back into that togetherness, that connectedness, that oneness, law of oneness. We then start engaging with other laws, like the law of polarity, for example, that if this exists, the opposite also exists. Gosh, sometimes the opposite can be there as a very useful tool to help us better understand the beauty and the majesty, the power of its polar opposite. We like to think that we would appreciate having it easy, having beauty, having life, having love, having everything be wonderful. But gosh, don't we appreciate it even more when it was a struggle to get, or when we started our lives without it, or when we experienced true separation, loneliness, what then it feels like to be connected to another person. Okay, if this feels like it's out in the weeds there for you, let's reel it back in. And let me get my pride flag a little bit better on me. So now let's consider, if we're thinking about the law of oneness, we're all connected to everything. Isn't it a tall order to learn to love other folks who cannot love you or choose not to learn to love you? Yeah, it can be a tall order. Even taller, this may feel counterintuitive. It's easy to not like somebody else. It can be. It's also easy to not like ourselves. Depending on the programming that you came into in our society, in your culture, in your family, right? In the relationships that you have experienced up to this point in time, your schooling, you may have been programmed to believe that in order to support your survival, it is in your best interest to behave in a particular way, to stay in alignment with certain expectations, to behave, to perform as something other than you. Because our survival, the need, the desire to survive is baked into our humanity. Sometimes it feels that we are more likely to survive if we are liked. We're more likely in a hub of humans that are building community, even eons ago, more likely to have food, shelter, relationships, water, access to all these things, right? If we are liked, if we get along with our group. That puts great pressure on us. With that genetic programming, right, somewhere deep down in there, on top of societal programming, to then be liked. It is so hard to remember when you are desperate to be liked that you are already loved. You're already loved completely, fully, truly by the divine creator source. Even if that doesn't resonate with you, by your higher self. Even if that doesn't resonate with you, you deserve to be loved fully, completely, unapologetically. But it can feel like a tall order in these times. We have been taught you are more digestible, more likable, easier to deal with if you lessen the you-ness of you, if you dampen your uniqueness, if you tone down and behave as expected. Gosh. Then we have the law of polarity. We have light and dark in all of us. The presence of shadow, the presence of darkness, simply implies the presence of light. That's it. The darkness, the heaviness, all of the shadow that we carry simply means that we are being blasted with light on one side of us. As it hits our being, we're in this 3D embodied existence, it cannot help but create a shadow. So the existence of the shadow, let's say you're only seeing shadow. Let's say the light is hitting you from behind, from your back. If you are only seeing the shadow and you cannot see the light, learning to feel the light is really important. Learning to be the light. Learning not to hide or turn our back completely on the shadow. How do we find that swivel? How do we hold space for both of these very opposite things? When you become non-judgmentally curious about the uniqueness of you and can question from a place of non-judgment, I noticed this about myself. How curious. I wonder where that comes from. Not, oh, why do I always do this? I'm always like this. This is always going to happen. I'm never going to get this. I'm never going to get that. I'm never going to be what I want to be, right? The always and the nevers. If you're able to non-judgmentally, with curiosity, simply question. Notice, I notice I feel triggered about this in this other person. Our relationships with other people and our feelings of being triggered by them often indicate an unhealed portion of ourselves. Ooh, let me say that again. Our reactions to other people, especially triggers or feelings of, I don't like that about that person, usually indicate an unhealed shadow aspect of ourselves. We may have been taught that you're not supposed to behave in this or that way, and seeing them behave in this or that way might feel very threatening. We're not supposed to behave in that way. I've learned it. I was taught that. How do we then lovingly ask ourselves where that came from? Come to understand where that came from. Not judge ourselves for it, just love ourselves for noticing it. And whether you're ready to release it or not, look at that person and say, non-judgmentally, I noticed this about them. I wonder where that comes from. I find when others behave in ways that feel distasteful for me, often, not only is there a portion of myself that may need healing, but often I may not be coming from that non-judgmental place that I'm attempting to train myself to look at myself with. If I look at someone else and I realize that they cannot have love for other people, whether they are similar to them or different from them, I start to ask, that's interesting. I notice they can't have love for other people. I wonder where that comes from. Then I start to notice that perhaps there's programming that they were born into. Perhaps they felt like they needed to survive. Perhaps they were trained or taught or steeped in teachings that validated one way of behavior and not another, that made them feel safe being something and not something else. We all feel this human need to survive, to be accepted by our group or our clan, our tribe, in order to have access to food and water and shelter and community. What is their genetic heritage like that made them feel unsafe to be themselves? What is it in me or other folks that they struggle to accept or love, that triggers the shadow in them that has not been healed. And then instead of coming from a place of judgment, these a-holes think this or that, or this jerk doesn't believe in this or that, or they don't think that we deserve this or that. That's very easy to fall into, and I'm not saying that it's wrong, but I find it more healing and more helpful for me to think how hard it must be for them to limit who they're allowed to love and feel connected to and open to. They are missing out on connecting with so many people in their human family. They are missing out on connecting with so many people who are vibrant and full of life and unapologetically owning their authentic energy. And then I start to empathize and sympathize, because I think, gosh, that must be really hard. That must be really hard to only be part of this one group, or to feel like you can only belong in this one group, or to feel like people behaving in this or that way is distasteful and not allowed. How limiting. How not connected to source and love and light. You don't have to like what other people do. You don't have to agree with their behaviors. You don't have to like any of it. But when someone attempts to control the behavior of someone else, or think that they're a bad person, or that they don't deserve to exist or to exist as their authentic selves, what that tells me is that this person is disconnected from so much of what the light offers, which is connection to everyone and everything. And I think, gosh, that must be so limiting. They're limiting themselves from loving so many other people. And they may believe truly in their heart that this is the best way of being, or the right way of being. And they can think that. And they don't have to agree with what I think or say. I don't need them to think that I am right or agree with me. But it moves me from feeling threatened by them or angry by them and their actions, and I start to see fear. I start to see fear. This was a really interesting lesson for me to learn, that the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is not hate. Well, that feels so counterintuitive. Isn't the opposite of love hate? And then I learned, and I have continued to kind of question this teaching and have seen it affirmed from my perspective. The opposite of love is fear. Let that sink in. The opposite of love is fear. Underneath hate, whatever form that takes, whatever shape that fills, is fear. When someone feels protective of their being, of their existence, of their family, of their community, of what they've worked for, of their reputation, of their way of life, they're afraid that someone else will take that from them. They feel threatened that someone else could negatively impact that. The hate that comes out in terms of their words, their actions, their behaviors, their beliefs, is fear. They are afraid. They're afraid. And then when you start to think about, well, what the heck are they afraid of? Again, it's that losing the things that they have. It's beautiful that they value the things that they have. I can appreciate that. I can appreciate valuing what you've worked to establish, or what makes you feel safe or comfortable, what feels safe for your nervous system. And then I start thinking about their programming and how they may have been trained or taught, or how it has been embodied for them. Their nervous system has learned safety and familiarity. This is why growing is so hard at any age, growing mentally or spiritually, right? Our inner child builds up these beliefs about what is safe and what is unsafe, and their job is to keep us alive. And so they need to keep us safe. So anything that feels unfamiliar feels unsafe. The nervous system will choose what is familiar, even if it is toxic, over what is unfamiliar, even if it is not. I'm going to say that again. This concept blows my mind. The nervous system will choose what is familiar over, even if it is toxic, over what is unfamiliar because it feels unsafe. It's uncertain. At least it's like the devil you know, right? At least when you move through familiarity, you have an idea of what you might experience, right? You have a bit of a concept of what might occur, what might happen, what you might experience. So it's far too easy to feel afraid and then to feel threatened. So when I see someone moving from a place of hate, I now see fear. Then I start to question, where does that fear come from? I see unhealed shadow work. I see that they are triggered by other folks who are unapologetically themselves. And I think, how were they not allowed to be themselves? How were they programmed? What they were taught became what they now know, right? They have this acceptance of a belief system that helps them to feel safe because it's familiar. And gosh, it must feel so threatening to see someone living very much outside of that. On top of that, I can feel empathy and sympathy for those feelings of fear. It doesn't mean I have to forgive hateful action or think that it's okay to behave in hateful ways. I don't think that it's okay to behave in hateful ways. But I do begin to build empathy and sympathy for people who do behave in hateful ways, because it tells me a lot about them. It tells me a lot about what they have or have not had access to. They haven't had access to what is unfamiliar to them. What is unfamiliar to them feels threatening. What is threatening builds fear, and from that fear comes hate. So, as we have polarized scream matches via social media, and the world feels as upside down as it is, I want you to give yourself permission to, at times, when it feels tempting to lean into the hate on the other side, to instead recognize the fear somewhere else. And to recognize the fear within yourself. What are we afraid of losing? What have we worked hard to create? There is a reason to be afraid. But we can't give it all of our power. If we give our fear all of our power, we're missing out on the polar opposite, the law of polarity, the law of oneness, love. Gosh, what a tall order to learn to love folks that are so different from you. But I believe that if we can be the love, if we can practice the love so thoroughly, the acceptance of other folks, that doesn't mean that we have to excuse hateful behavior, but simply holding empathy for someone who is growing hate from their fear. Simply holding empathy for it. We may then be able to heal our own shadows. We may then be able to heal our own fears. We may then be able to release our own hate. And under a lot of that is a lot of unlearning what has been programmed for ourselves, so that we can learn to love ourselves. That is easier said than done. But as we are seeing this polarity play out, as we are seeing love and hate or fear play out, as we are choosing to kind of keep our heads swiveling and be aware of the fear and the hate that springs from it. How big that fire is burning, how close it is to us, how hot is the flame. For myself, if I stare into the flame too long, it's not great for my mental wellness, my energetic being. It's not great for my physical health. It's not great for me. I've learned that one of my roles is helping folks who are first responders heal. I am here to help them prepare and then to rest. Make a sandwich for a friend. Have water, right? There are folks who are using water to put out the fire. There are folks who are seeing that fires can be used to burn a field in order for new growth to occur. But gosh, the fire is hot and it feels so close. So how do we keep that head swivel where we are aware of the fire, how bright it is burning, how close it is to us, how safe we are or aren't? Can we stay where we are, or do we need to move? What role do we fill? Are we a first responder? Are we someone who cares for the first responders? Are we someone who has conversations about the fire? There are so many different roles that you can play. Part of that role is also learning to be the love. How do we be the love? How do we feel the love instead of not just acting in love? Acting in love is so important. When you can be the love for yourself, go anywhere. Whether you're at home with a loved one or with a pet, out walking down the street, or you go to a public space, there may be people there who cannot hold love for you. And that tells us a lot about their unhealed traumas and their unhealed shadows and their shadow selves, right? And we can empathize and sympathize while also saying, please treat me with love, or respect at least, and not through the hate that is coming from your fear. When you are unapologetically yourself and taking up space, there is someone watching you. Always. There's always someone benefiting from you. Sometimes it's in the moment, they're actively watching you. Sometimes it's hearing about it later. Maybe it's from afar. Maybe it's up close. Maybe it's someone that you know personally. Maybe it's someone who you've never met. But you being you gives them permission to be them. There is someone who, watching you move through your shadow, watching you move through the muck and the heaviness of what that work entails, of learning to love yourself despite the dark programming, the dark teachings, the genetic imprints, the fears that we have, that we're not lovable, that we're not good enough, that we're not worthy, projecting onto other people, right? That's what I see when I see someone who is not coming from a place of love. I see them projecting their fears onto someone else of not being enough, not being worthy, not being lovable. Let's be the opposite of that. We don't have to like their actions. We don't have to accept actions that come from a place of hate. But I have found it helpful, and maybe you will as well if you haven't already, and you can try this on, and if it doesn't fit you, that's okay. Maybe you will find it helpful to empathize and sympathize with folks who are missing out with connecting with a lot of their human family who they are energetically connected to. Through the law of polarity, we are learning about ourselves. We are learning about the light and the dark within all of us. Their fear of you may be an indication that they have unhealed shadow aspects of themselves, and they may be projecting that fear of their own unworthiness, of their own unlovableness, however they may see it, onto you. You, being different, may feel like a threat, and that fear may feed what grows into hate. Gosh, that's a lot to think about. So, know that there is someone watching you, either up close or from afar. Maybe someone you know, maybe someone you've never met, maybe you will never meet them, who either is or has or will benefit from you being authentically you, from you learning to love the dark parts of yourself and be the light. When you take up space, when you breathe deeply, when you are the unison of you, there is something uniquely you that no one can replicate. No one, try as they might, can replicate. And when you embrace the unison of you, the uniqueness of you, the beautiful, individualistic ideal of who you are, there are likely many someones who are benefiting. So you deserve it for yourself. To be unapologetically you. You deserve that love. You deserve that. But if that's a tall order, if it's hard, which I know that it is, and it can be, would it help to think about doing it for someone else? Would it help to think about being you to give someone else permission to be them? Sometimes when I have very high social anxiety and I'm feeling anxious about going somewhere and being seen somewhere and taking up space and having to have conversations and all of that, instead of making it about me and me not being enough or me not having enough energy or whatever I might be spiraling through, I have the thought, there is someone there who needs to hear something. And I'm open for that message channeling through me, whatever that may be. When I make it about someone else, when I make it about showing up for someone else, I'm motivated. I want to go. I know that there's someone there who has a message that they need to hear, and that somehow in our conversation, I may be guided or I may be inspired to say something to them. And it may just feel like a conversation to me, but maybe it means something really important to them. Maybe me pushing through my anxiety and feeling like crap, but being there and showing up and saying that aloud to someone and saying, I almost didn't come because I just don't have the spoons, but I'm grateful that I'm here now that I'm here. Maybe that is enough for someone else to say, wow, I didn't always feel like I had the energy to come. And I always thought that they always felt like they had all the energy in the whole world. And now I'm giving myself permission to simply be. That's just a simple example. It can be anything. So this is an invitation during Pride Month, whether you are a beautiful queer person or you are an amazing queer ally, or maybe you are on the periphery of this community and you don't know how to connect. Simply being you, taking up space as you, and giving others permission to be them, non-judgmentally, whether it is or isn't in alignment with how you like to be, giving them permission. Practice being the love. And if we can stomach it, with empathy, considering those who are acting out of hate, it's sprouting from fear. They're terrified. I can empathize and sympathize with having fear. And I know that I'm not here to get anyone, to take anything from anyone. But I understand feeling threatened. That doesn't make hateful action or behavior okay. But it can help me to, instead of continuing to live in this world of hateful polarity, instead of giving them the power of having my fear, of that sprouting into hate, all that energy can be turned into love that I can give to other people as I'm continuing to learn to love myself and aspects of myself. I think we all struggle with that. I certainly do. And I'm attempting to give myself permission more and more every day, in small ways and in big, to simply be, to simply show up, to simply take up space unapologetically. And that is hard. It's easy to say, and it can be, at least for me, hard to do. But if I can do it, I know you can. And if it's hard for you to show up as yourself before yourself, maybe thinking that it could be for someone else, whether you know them now or maybe you'll know them in the future. Someone is or has or will benefit from you being you. So, during Pride Month and all day, every day, please give yourself permission to take up space unapologetically. Please give yourself permission to consider the law of oneness, that we can all be connected, and gosh, what a tall order it is, to learn to love other people and to learn to love ourselves, despite our differences, to be the love. That's not an excuse for hateful behavior or actions. However, energetically, it helps for us to be re-empowered, to not give our energy away to hate. Let them. If that's where they need to be, it may be helpful to see that that is simply unhealed programming, traumas projected onto others. And gosh, how limiting that must be for them to feel so separate from so many who are in their human community, family. The thoughts we have, the words we say, the actions we take impact everyone around us. It impacts everything in our vicinity. So, when we have the energy to be a force for good, to be a force for light, to be a force for love, find your way into that. Tap your way into that, whatever that looks or feels like for you. Okay. Happy Pride Month. Thank you for sharing time, space, and energy with me here today. I hope that you find ways, even in very small ways or in bigger ways, to unapologetically take up space today and every day, to be your authentic self. If you need to incrementally build that, find small steps to incrementally take up space and celebrate others who are taking up space and being themselves. Maybe letting them know that you see them is something that they need to hear. Holding space and understanding and empathy for people who are sadly allowing their fear to fuel hate. It's easy to manipulate people through hate. It's easy to manipulate people through fear. When their fears are triggered and they are making choices from fear, not from love, that's got to be tough. So, practice love, practice being the love, tap into the energy of love. Practice loving yourself in the small ways and the big. If you can find it in your heart, to hold empathy at least, sympathy maybe, and sometimes maybe even love for someone who is struggling with hate because they are steeped in fear. That can feel really empowering, especially at this point in time, especially in this polarized place that we find ourselves. I love you. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you around. Bye.